Following the conclusion of Carter and Emma, I began to prepare my artwork tools and equipments. Finding my old manager, Martin, felt like stepping back into a world I'd left behind years ago. We met in a cozy little cafe downtown, the same place where we used to discuss all my old photography gigs. The familiar smell of fresh coffee and the gentle hum of conversation made me feel nostalgic, but also a bit nervous. I wasn't the same person I was back then, and I wasn't sure how Martin would react to seeing me again after so long. When I walked in, he was already there, sipping on an espresso, his laptop open in front of him. He looked up as I approached, his eyes widening in surprise. "Irene," he said, standing up to greet me. "It's been a while." "Too long," I replied with a small smile, taking the seat opposite him. After some small talk, we got down to business. I told him about my desire to get back into photography, and he listened intently, nodding along as I spoke. "You were one of the best I ever worked with, Irene," Martin said, all smiles. "I'm glad you want to get back into it. The industry could use your talent again." His words filled me with a sense of reassurance. Maybe this was the right move after all. "So, what do you have in mind?" I asked, trying to gauge what kind of opportunities were out there for me. Martin leaned back in his chair thoughtful. "Actually, there's a job that just came up, and I think you'd be perfect for it. A company is looking for someone to shoot a promotional video. High quality stuff, very artistic. It could be a great way to get your name back out there." "That sounds perfect," I said, excitement bubbling up inside me. "Who's the client?" He paused for a moment before answering. "Alvida Company." My heart skipped a beat at the mention of the company's name. I hadn't expected my first job back to bring me face to face with such huge opportunity again. Alvida Company have always been known as a company for big shots. I didn't think of starting big, but it seemed the goddess was on my side on this. "Is that going to be a problem?" Martin asked, noticing my reaction. "No," I quickly replied, trying to sound casual. "No problem at all." The deal was sealed, and I left the cafe with a renewed sense of purpose. The next day, I arrived at Alvida Company, ready to scout locations for the shoot. I had planned everything meticulously, down to the last detail, but when I got to the building, I hit an unexpected roadblock. The security guard at the entrance, a burly man with a permanent scowl molded on his face, blocked my way. "You can't go in," he said gruffly, his tone leaving no room for argument. I tried to explain the situation, showing him my credentials and explaining that I needed to shoot a few clips inside for easier editing. But he wasn't having it. "Internal confidentiality requirements," he stated flatly, his eyes narrowing as he looked me up and down. "But I have permission," I insisted, growing increasingly frustrated. "I'm working for the company." He didn't budge, and that's when things took an ugly turn. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a suggestive whisper. "Maybe if you make me happy, I'll let you in." His words made my skin crawl, and my temper flared. I wasn't the same timid person I had once been. Without thinking, I shoved him away, my voice firm as I told him to back off. The guard's expression darkened, and he grabbed my arm, his grip tightening painfully. "You're going to regret that," he hissed. Just as things were about to escalate, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "What's going on here?" Leon. His presence was like a sudden gust of wind, sweeping away the tension. The guard immediately released me, his face paling as he realized he was standing behind him. I was just," the guard stammered, but Leon cut him off. "Save it," Leon snapped, his eyes cold as ice. "You're fired. Get out of my sight." The guard didn't need to be told twice. He slunk away, leaving me standing there, still a bit shaken. Leon turned to me, his expression softening. "Are you okay, Irene?" I nodded, trying to steady my breathing. I'm fine, thanks to you. He gave me a once-over, as if checking for any signs of injury. Then, with a slight smile, he gestured for me to follow him. Come on, let's go to my office. We can discuss the shoot there. Your office? I was shocked. Yes, my office, he replied with a playful smirk. I wasn't expecting that really. I know most of Leon's businesses during my time as Matthew's Luna, but I never got the knowledge of owning the big shot Alvida company that everyone trips for. My first job was lined up, and it just so happened to reconnect me with the man who had been occupying my thoughts, far more than I was willing to admit. As we walked through the sleek corridors of the building, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of Dakfuji. Being with Leon felt oddly comfortable despite everything. When we reached his office, he closed the door behind us and offered me a seat. I couldn't help but notice the way his eyes lingered on me, a hint of something more in his gaze. So, he said, leaning against his desk, you're the mysterious genius photographer I've been hearing about. I couldn't help but blush slightly at his words. I wouldn't call myself a genius. He chuckled, his voice low and smooth. Modest too. I like that. There was a playful glint in his eyes, and I found myself relaxing in his presence. Maybe this job was going to be more interesting than I'd originally thought. Let's talk about the shoot, I said, trying to steer the conversation back to business, though I could feel the connection between us simmering just beneath the surface. Leon nodded, but I could tell he was still thinking about the encounter downstairs. I'll make sure nothing like that happens again. You deserve to be treated with respect. His words were sincere, and I felt a warmth spreading through me. Despite the complications, being around Leon felt right. And as we discussed the details of the shoot, I couldn't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was something more waiting for us beyond just business. Sigh. Yi kao de. After successfully wrapping up the shoot, I couldn't help but feel accomplished. The day had been long, but every moment spent behind the camera had reminded me of why I fell in love with photography in the first place. As I packed up my equipment, Leon walked over, a curious look on his face. I'm looking forward to seeing the final product, he said, his voice warm. I'll have the samples ready in 3 days, I replied, meeting his gaze. I'll send them over, and we can review them together. He nodded, satisfied with that. Sounds good. Oh, and I heard you're planning a photography exhibition soon. I'd love to attend. I paused, surprised that he already knew about it. I hadn't told many people, only a few close contacts in the industry, and, of course, Martin. But then again, Leon had his ways of finding things out. Of course, you're invited, I said, a small smile tugging at the corners of my lips. It's a prelude to my official comeback. Then I wouldn't miss it for the world, he said, his voice lowering a fraction, enough to make my pulse quicken. We exchanged a few more pleasantries before parting ways, and as I drove back home, I found myself reflecting on the day. Despite the rough start with the security guard, everything had turned out better than expected. And Leon, well, there was no denying the pull I felt whenever I was around him. But I couldn't allow myself to get swept away. I needed to stay focused. Once I got home, I wasted no time diving into the editing process. I reviewed each shot carefully, making sure every detail was perfect. The images came together beautifully, better than I had even imagined. The creative energy I felt from the shoot flowed into the editing, and before I knew it, the samples were ready. I sent them off to Martin, and not long after, my phone buzzed with a message. Irene, these are stunning. You haven't lost your touch at all. I can't wait to see the full exhibition. Asterisk. His praise made my heart swell with pride. I hadn't been sure how people would react to my work after being away from the industry for so long, but Martin's approval was exactly the boost I needed. As I was about to close my laptop, another message popped up. This one was from Leon. The photos are incredible. You've truly outdone yourself. I'm looking forward to seeing more at your exhibition. I couldn't help but smile as I read his words. There was something so genuine about the way he expressed himself, something that made me feel seen, not just as a photographer, but as a person. It was a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. "Thank you, Leon," I replied, my fingers hovering over the keyboard for a moment, before adding, "I'm looking forward to it too." After sending the message, I leaned back in my chair, my thoughts drifting. The exhibition was just around the corner, and while the excitement of my comeback filled me with a sense of purpose, there was also an underlying issue of something else. Something that had started the moment Leon walked back into my life. The day of the exhibition had finally arrived, and with it came a mix of emotions and excitement that buzzed through me like electricity. This was my first public appearance since my departure from Miles' pack. My first time revealing myself not just as Irene, the former Luna, but as Irene, the artist. The gallery was already filling with people when I arrived, and I took a moment to steady my breath before stepping out of the car. The venue was stunning, with high ceilings and polished floors that gleamed under the soft lighting. My photographs were displayed along the walls, each piece carefully curated to tell a story of strength, of vulnerability, of survival. As I walked through the space, I noticed the way people paused in front of each image, captivated by the emotions I had poured into my work. It wasn't long before the media began to swarm. Cameras flashed, and journalists thrust microphones toward me, each vying for a quote or a moment of my time. But I was ready for them. My years as Luna had taught me how to handle the spotlight, how to navigate the probing questions with grace and poise. I answered them all with a calm confidence that surprised even me. "This exhibition is very personal to me," I said to one reporter. "It represents a new chapter in my life, one where I've reclaimed my identity and found my voice as an artist." The journalist nodded, scribbling down my words as the camera captured every angle of my face. I was no longer just a figure in the background. I was the subject, the focal point, and it felt empowering. As the evening went on, I found myself moving from one conversation to the next, mingling with art critics, potential clients, and fellow artists who expressed admiration for my work. Martin, my manager, approached me with a grin that stretched from ear to ear. "Irene, you've done it," he said, his voice filled with pride. "This exhibition is a massive success. We've got interest from several major outlets, and I've already had inquiries about potential collaborations. This is just the beginning." Hearing those words filled me with a sense of accomplishment that I hadn't felt in years. All the hard work, all the sacrifices, it had all been worth it. "Thank you, Martin," I said, squeezing his hand. "I couldn't have done this without your support." He chuckled. "Nonsense. This was all you. The industry is already buzzing about your comeback. I wouldn't be surprised if you're flooded with offers in the coming days." As Martin moved on to talk with other guests, I turned to find Leon standing nearby, his gaze fixed on one of my photographs. He looked different tonight, more contemplative, as if he was seeing me in a new light. When he finally noticed me watching him, he walked over, a small smile playing on his lips. "You're incredible, you know that," he said, his voice low so only I could hear. I felt a warmth spread through me at his words. "Thank you, Leon. That means a lot, especially coming from you." He glanced around the gallery, taking in the scene. "This exhibition, it's more than just a comeback. It's a statement. You've made people see you for who you truly are." I nodded, feeling the truth of his words. "I'm not hiding anymore. This is me, my work, my vision." Leon's expression grew thoughtful. Miles never realized what he had. Not only did he lose an exceptional Luna, but he also lost an opportunity that could have changed the course of his company. "Your talent, Irene, it's beyond anything I've seen." There was no bitterness in his tone, only a quiet observation. But it still hit me hard. I had spent so long doubting myself, wondering if I had made the right choices. Yet here I was, standing tall in my own success, no longer tethered to the past. The promotional video we shot will be released next week, Leon continued, changing the topic slightly. We plan to use your rising popularity to give our campaign an extra push. I have no doubt it will be a huge hit. I smiled, appreciating his faith in me. I'm glad our collaboration is mutually beneficial. He met my gaze, his eyes holding mine for just a beat longer than necessary. More than you know, Irene. More than you know. The gallery buzzed with the low hum of conversations, the clinking of glasses, and the occasional laughter that echoed through the space. Leon and I stood near one of my favorite photographs, a soft smile playing on his lips as we discussed the inspiration behind the piece. I have to say, Irene, Leon began, his voice warm and sincere, your work is breathtaking. It is as if each photograph tells a story, one that only you could capture. I felt a flush of pride at his words. Thank you, Leon. That means a lot coming from you. This exhibition, it is, I trailed off. Before Leon could respond, the atmosphere in the room changed. I felt it before I saw it. An icy chill that crept up my spine, a familiar tension that tightened my chest. I turned to see Miles and Thea entering the gallery, their presence instantly drawing the attention of those around them. My heart sank, the joy of the evening evaporating in an instant. Beside me, Carter and Emma stiffened, their expressions darkening as they caught sight of the intruders. Without a word, they moved to stand in front of me, their protective instincts kicking in. Miles, Carter said in a low, warning tone. There are humans present. If you're here to cause trouble, you should reconsider. Miles' eyes flicked to Carter, then back to me. I'm not here to cause a scene, he said coolly, though the tension in his voice was unmistakable. I'm here to retrieve what's mine. Thea, standing beside him with a smug look, chimed in. The house. We want it back, Irene. My chest tightened with a mix of anger and disbelief. After everything they had put me through, they thought they could just walk in here and demand. I hand over the house as if I owed them something. I squared my shoulders, refusing to be intimidated. I won't return the house, I said. After everything that's happened, I'm not going to offer you anything. No gifts, no blessings, nothing. Miles' eyes narrowed, his jaw clenching. You don't have a choice, Irene. I met his gaze head on, unwilling to back down. The house is no longer mine to give, I said calmly. I sold it, it belongs to someone else now. A flicker of surprise crossed Miles' face, quickly replaced by anger. He took a step forward, but before he could do anything, Leon stepped in. That's enough, Leon said authoritatively. He turned to one of the security guards stationed near the entrance. Remove them from the premises. The guard hesitated for only a moment before stepping forward, gesturing for Miles and Thea to leave. Miles' gaze burned into mine, a silent promise of retribution, but I refused to flinch. You'll regret this, Irene. Miles spat, his voice low and venomous. Not as much as I would if I let you keep controlling my life, I retorted, my voice cold. The guard gently but firmly led them out, and as they disappeared from view, I felt the tension slowly drain from my body. But the damage had already been done. The dark cloud that had followed Miles into the room now lingered, casting a shadow over the evening. Leon must have noticed the change in my mood, because he turned to me with the softest expression I've ever seen on him. I'm sorry that had to happen tonight. Irene, I shook my head, trying to shake off the unease. It's not your fault, Leon. I should have expected something like this. He studied me for a moment, then offered a small, reassuring smile. Let me take your mind off things. How about we plan another date? Just the two of us. His voice was gentle, almost coaxing, and I found myself nodding before I even realized what I was doing. There was something about Leon, Something comforting, something tempting, that made it hard to say no. "That sounds nice," I said quietly, a small smile tugging at the corners of my lips. Leon's smile widened, and for the first time since Miles and Thea had shown up, I felt a small spark of joy that hadn't quite been extinguished. "Then, it's a date," he said, his tone lightening, and I could tell he was trying to lift my spirits. I couldn't resist the warmth in his voice, the way he seemed to genuinely care about how I was feeling. The night air was cool as Leon walked me to my front door. The conversation between us was still warm and full of light laughter. Our second date had been just as pleasant as the first, if not more so. There was an ease between us that I hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of harmony that felt natural, unforced. As we reached my doorstep, I turned to thank him. But before I could get the words out, Leon stepped closer, his gaze locking onto mine. For a moment, the world seemed to stop, the air thickening with an unspoken feeling. His hand gently brushed a strand of hair away from my face, his touch sending a small shiver down my spine. "Irene," he said softly, his voice almost a whisper, "there's something I need to do." Before I could react, he leaned in, his lips pressing against mine in a kiss that was both tender and electrifying. My breath caught in my throat as a wave of warmth spread through me, my heart pounding in my chest. The kiss was brief, just a moment in time, but it left a lasting impression, one that I knew I wouldn't be able to forget easily. When he pulled back, there was only apology in his eyes, and something deeper which I couldn't fathom. "I'm sorry," he murmured sincerely. "It's just, you're too beautiful, Irene. I couldn't help myself." I was caught off guard, not by the kiss itself, but by the raw honesty in his words. For a moment, I could only stare at him, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of the emotions swirling within me. Leon was undeniably handsome, his chiseled features and intense blue eyes, the kind that could make any woman weak in the knees. But it wasn't just his looks that affected me. It was the way he treated me, with a respect and admiration that I hadn't experienced in a long time. But despite the growing attraction between us, I knew that getting involved with him would only complicate things. I'd already been through so much betrayal, heartache, and the constant struggle to protect myself in a world where I felt increasingly vulnerable. The last thing I needed was to dive headfirst into another uncertain relationship. "I don't want to complicate things," I said. It wasn't a rejection, not exactly, but it was a boundary I needed to set, for both our sakes. Leon's expression changed, a flash of something like hurt crossing his face, before he masked it with a sad smile. "I understand," he said quietly, "but it's a bit heartbreaking, you know, that my charm hasn't been fully recognized by you." His words were light, a touch of humor in them, but I could hear the underlying disappointment. My heart ached at the thought of causing him pain, but I had to stay true to what I felt was right. "Leon," I started, but he shook his head, cutting me off gently. "It's okay," he said. "I respect your choice, Irene. I always will. And no matter what, I'm just glad I get to spend time with you." We parted ways. Thereafter, after parting ways with Leon, my life settled into a predictable routine. Days were filled with shopping trips to the city's upscale boutiques, where I indulged in the luxury of my newfound freedom, picking out clothes and accessories that suited the new independent me. Traveling became a welcome distraction too, as I wandered through vibrant streets and peaceful landscapes, trying to lose myself in the beauty of the world outside my troubles. My photography work was flourishing. The exhibition had been a success beyond my wildest dreams, and the praise continued to roll in. Each new assignment brought with it a sense of accomplishment and a hefty paycheck. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was standing on my own 2 feet, untethered from the past. My life was moving forward, even if some of the steps were still shaky. One afternoon, I finished up a call with my manager, who was bubbling with excitement over a potential new project. I hung up, feeling a rare sense of contentment, when my phone rang again. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in a while, Maria. "Hello?" I answered, surprised and wary. "Irene, darling." Maria's voice came through, warm and filled with concern. "How are you? I've been worried about you." "I'm fine, Maria," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "Really, I am." "I'm glad to hear that," she said, though her voice carried much of unsaid things. "But I worry about you, living out there alone, you know. It's not safe, especially for someone like you." I stiffened at her words, my grip tightening on the phone. "I'm not alone," I said, though I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince, her or myself. "I've made a life for myself, Maria. Leaving the pack was the best decision I could have made." "I know you believe that," she sighed, "but you're still vulnerable, Irene. Rogues, they don't have true safety, especially not a human who was expelled from her pack. You know how things work in our world. Miles' enemies might see you as an easy target for revenge." Her words struck a nerve, sending a cold shiver down my spine. I had considered the dangers, of course, but hearing them spoken aloud, by someone I once trusted, made them all too real. "I'll manage," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "I've learned to take care of myself." Maria was silent for a moment, and I could almost hear the gears turning in her mind. "Irene, why don't you come back to the pack?" she suggested. "I know things have been difficult, but we're family, Thea. She made mistakes, but she's still your sister. We can work this out together." Her plea tugged at something deep within me. Family had always been important to me, and once upon a time I would have done anything to preserve those ties. But that was before the betrayal, before the lies, before I had to rebuild myself from the ashes of what they'd left behind. "Maria," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady despite the anger swirling within me. "I understand that you value family ties, but what about my feelings? What about the pain I've had to endure because of them? Because of him?" My voice cracked on the last word, and I quickly swallowed back the tears that threatened to spill. "Irene, I didn't mean to," she began, but I cut her off. "Maria, please," I said, my voice hardening. "I appreciate your concern, but I can't go back. I won't go back. I need to move forward with my life, and that doesn't include forgiving Thea or returning to a place that caused me so much pain." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I could almost feel Maria's sadness, her disappointment. But I couldn't let that sway me. Not this time. "I'm sorry you feel that way," she finally said. "But I hope you find peace, Irene. I really do." "Thank you," I whispered, though it felt hollow. "But please, Maria, leave me alone." Without waiting for her response, I ended the call. The silence that followed was deafening. I sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands, feeling the cracks in my resolve starting to show. No matter how much I tried to convince myself that I was fine, that I was moving on, the truth was there, lurking in the shadows. I wasn't as strong as I wanted to be. At least, not yet. I had just settled into my seat at a quaint little cafe when I saw Leon stroll in. His presence filled the room like a shadow that darkened my mood. He spotted me almost immediately, his eyes lighting up with that same charm I was used to seeing, and something else, something that made my heart beat just a little faster, despite my best efforts to stay indifferent. "Well, well, if it isn't the elusive Irene," Leon said, sliding into the chair across from me without waiting for an invitation. "You really are good at resisting the urge to call me." I forced a smile, trying to mask the discomfort gnawing at me. "I've been busy." "Busy avoiding me?" he teased, though his eyes searched mine as if looking for a deeper answer. Before I could respond, a sharp, icy sensation made me gasp. Cold water drenched my hair, soaking through my clothes, and I jumped up in shock. The entire coffee fell silent as I tried to process what had just happened. My gaze shot to the woman who had appeared behind me, a twisted smile on her lips as she held an empty glass in her hand. "Oops, didn't see you there," she sneered venomously. Leon stood up immediately, his posture tense. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded. The woman tossed her hair, glaring at me with open hostility. "I'm just giving her a wake-up call, Leon. You might be blind to it, but she's nothing more than a divorced, washed-up woman. You deserve better." I wiped the water from my face, my hands trembling with anger and humiliation. This wasn't just about the water. This was about something much deeper, something more sinister. Leon stepped in front of me, shielding me from the woman's gaze, as if she were a threat he needed to eliminate. "Get out," he ordered, his voice colder than I had ever heard it. The woman's eyes widened in shock. "Leon, you don't mean that. I'm just looking out for you. You were with me first, remember? Before this. She didn't finish her sentence, but the insult hung heavy in the air. Leon's jaw tightened, and without another word, he gestured to his bodyguards who had been standing near the entrance. They moved in quickly, taking the woman by the arms and pulling her toward the exit. She struggled, still yelling over her shoulder. "She's nothing, Leon. You'll see. You'll regret this." The cafe slowly returned to its normal hum as the door closed behind her, leaving an uncomfortable silence in her wake. Leon turned back to me, and he reached out to touch my arm. "Irene, I'm sorry about that," he said, his voice full of genuine regret. "She's just someone I used to know. I had no idea she would act like that." I shook my head, still trying to regain my composure. "What was that about?" Leon hesitated, running a hand through his hair, as if searching for the right words. "She's someone I was seeing before I met you. We were at the same party the night we first met. But once I saw you, I lost interest in her. Clearly she didn't take it well." I looked down at the table, my mind racing. This was more than just a random attack. It was jealousy, pure and simple. And it was directed at me because of Leon. I had wanted to keep things casual with him, to avoid any complications, but now I was tangled up in something far messier than I'd ever anticipated. "Leon, I don't want any trouble," I said quietly. "Maybe it's best if we keep our distance." Leon's face fell, and for a moment he looked genuinely hurt. "You're not the one causing trouble, Irene. I'll take care of this." I sighed, knowing he wouldn't let it go so easily. "What are you going to do with her?" He paused, then answered carefully. "She's being sent abroad. It's better for everyone if she's far away." His words sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't just his decision to have her removed that unsettled me. It was the calm, calculated way he handled it. I realized that Leon wasn't just charming, he was powerful. "So, let's get you home," he said, pulling on my hand without giving the chance for another word. The car ride was quiet, as neither of us said a word to the other. I stared out the window, the city lights blurring as we drove. My mind was a jumble of thoughts, mostly centered around the incident at the cafe. I hadn't even realized how deep I was getting into this with Leon until that woman's crazed actions made it clear. We pulled up to my apartment, and Leon parked the car, turning to face me. The way he looked at me, with that intensity in his eyes, made my heart race. But I couldn't help the sarcastic comment that slipped out. "You know, Leon," I began, unbuckling my seatbelt, but not making any move to leave the car. "You might be even more dangerous than my ex-husband." He raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Oh, and why is that?" I turned to face him fully, letting out a dry laugh. "Because, at least with Miles, I knew what I was dealing with. But with you, I'm not so sure. I mean, who knows how many more crazed women might show up trying to dump cold water on me." Leon's lips curved into a small smile, but his eyes didn't lose that seriousness. "You're right. I can't predict what others might do, but I can promise you that I won't let anyone hurt you, Irene. Not Miles, not anyone else. I shook my head, frustrated and amused. It's just unfair, you know. I haven't even had the chance to really get close to you. And yet here I am, dealing with all this drama. His smile widened, and before I could react, he leaned in and kissed me. I pulled my hand away, giving him a soft but firm smile. Thanks for the offer, but I think I'll stick to just getting some sleep tonight. Leon nodded, respecting my decision without a trace of disappointment on his face. Fair enough, but just so you know, I'm not going anywhere. I opened the car door, stepping out into the cool night air. I turned back to him, still feeling the lingering effects of his kiss on my lips. Good night, Leon. Good night, Irene, he replied with a wink. As I walked up to my apartment, I couldn't help but glance back at him. He was still watching me, his expression unreadable in the dim light. Part of me wondered what it would be like to let go, to just give in, at least for the night. Before I knew it, I found my way back to him. By now, he was out of his car, standing with his back leaning on it. You see, you are right, I said, hastening my steps closer to him. Let's pick up from where we stopped. I pulled him into a kiss. The next morning, I woke up to an empty bed. My hand instinctively reached out, feeling the cool sheets where Leon had been just hours before. A pang of worry shot through me, and I sat up, pulling the blanket around me as I scanned the room. Everything was as we had left it. Clothes scattered, a half-empty glass of water on the nightstand, and the scent of him still lingering in the air. But he was gone. Just as the panic began to set in, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I grabbed it quickly, feeling relieved when I saw Leon's name on the screen. The message was short, but explained everything. Had to leave early, Miles scrambling. He lost several important clients after my last move. Don't worry, see you soon. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. So that was it. Leon had left early to deal with the fallout from the attack he'd launched on Miles' company. I couldn't help but feel a little thrill of satisfaction at the thought of Matthew's business crumbling, piece by piece, under Leon's calculated moves. But then, another thought struck me, one that sent warmth spreading through my chest. Leon had known I was pregnant last night. He knew, and yet, he had treated me with such care, making sure every moment was filled with pleasure and tenderness. It was something Miles had never done. With him, everything had always been about control, about him taking what he wanted and leaving me with whatever scraps of affection he could spare. But with Leon, it was different. He gave me more than I ever thought I deserved. For the first time, I realized that my divorce hadn't been the end of everything. It had been the beginning of something new, something better. My life hadn't turned into the hell I feared. Instead, it had opened up to possibilities I hadn't even dared to dream of. And last night, I couldn't stop the grin that spread across my face as the memories came flooding back. The way Leon had touched me, the way he had made me feel, it was like waking up after years of being half asleep. Every moan, every gasp, every moment of pure, unbridled pleasure. It was all because of him. My body still tingled with the memory of it, and I felt a blush creeping up my cheeks. I shook my head, laughing softly at myself. Who would have thought that I, Irene, would be lying here grinning like a love-struck teenager after what should have been just a casual fling? But it wasn't just that. It was more. It was freedom. It was power. It was a rediscovery of who I was, who I could be. Pulling the blanket tighter around me, I lay back down, letting the happiness wash over me. There was no denying it. I had found something beautiful in the ruins of my past. As the hours slipped by, I found myself falling into a comfortable routine. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that allowed my mind to wander back to the events of the previous night. But reality quickly pulled me back when I heard a knock at the door. It was firm, almost impatient, and I sighed as I set down the trash I had been about to take out. When I opened the door, my breath caught in my throat. Standing there were Miles' parents. I hadn't seen them since the divorce, and the sight of them now, after everything that had happened, sent shivers through me. Jonathan and Grace Blackwood. I greeted them cautiously, stepping aside to let them in. They walked in and Grace wasted no time. Her tone sharp as she began. "Irene, we need to talk." I nodded slowly, waiting for the inevitable. Jonathan, who had always been the calmer of the two, stepped forward, his voice slightly gentler but still firm. "We've always thought highly of you, Irene. You were a good match for Miles. But what you did at the wedding..." Grace cut in, her eyes narrowing. "You've ruined Miles' reputation. The pack is questioning his leadership, and the company." "I'm sorry," I interrupted, my voice steady. "But what happened at the wedding was the truth. I didn't ruin Miles' reputation. He did that all on his own." Mrs. Blackwood's lips thinned, and she exchanged a glance with her husband. "We didn't come here to argue with you, Irene," she said, her voice colder now. "We need you to issue a statement. Say that Miles' relationship with Thea started after your marriage broke down. It's the least you can do." I stared at them in disbelief. After everything, they were asking me to protect Miles, to lie for him. Why would I do that? I asked, crossing my arms. He's the one who cheated. He's the one who broke our marriage vows, not me. Jonathan stepped in again, trying to soften the tension. "Irene, think about it. The pack, the company, they're questioning everything. Miles' leadership is at stake. If you don't do this, it could destroy everything he's built." "And what about me?" I shot back. "What about everything I lost? I was thrown aside, betrayed, and not one of you came to me. Not one of you offered me any comfort after the divorce. But now that he is suffering, you come to me asking for favors." Grace's eyes flickered with anger, but she held her tongue. Instead, she changed tactics. "We also want the house back, Irene. It holds so many memories for our family. It's only fair." Fair. I almost laughed at the word. "You think it's fair to ask me to return the house after everything that's happened? That house is all I have left after your son destroyed my life." The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. They hadn't expected resistance from me, especially not after how submissive I had been throughout my marriage to Miles. But I was done being the obedient wife, the one who always put everyone else's needs before her own. "I'm not issuing any statement," I said firmly, meeting their eyes one by one. "And I'm not giving the house back. You're all so selfish. Not one of you cared about how I felt, about what I went through. So no, I won't help you cover up your son's mistakes. You'll have to deal with the consequences on your own." Mrs. Blackwood's face flushed with anger, but Mr. Blackwood held her back with a hand on her arm. "You've made your choice, Irene," he said quietly. "Just remember, actions have consequences." I didn't flinch. I know that better than anyone. Without another word, they turned and left, the door closing behind them with a heavy finality. I stood there for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. The encounter had shaken me, but I knew I had made the right choice. I wouldn't be their scapegoat, not anymore. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I watched Mike's parents walk away, their demands still echoing in my mind. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone, dialing Leon's number with shaky fingers. I needed to secure the house, to make sure it was out of their reach for good. The phone barely rang before Leon's voice came through, steady and comforting. "Irene, what's wrong?" "Leon, I need your help," I said, my words tumbling out in a rush. "Miles' parents were just here. They want the house back, and I can't let them have it. I need to do something, anything, to make sure it's protected. Can you renovate it? Right away." There was a pause on the other end, and I could almost picture Leon's thoughtful countenance. "Renovating it might delay things, But it won't solve the root of the problem, he replied calmly. If they want the house that badly, they'll keep coming after you, even if it's unrecognizable. My heart sank at his words. Then what do we do? I can't keep fighting them forever, Leon. I have a better plan, he said, and from his tone, I could bet 100 that he was smirking too. Irene's point of view. A week later, I found myself standing at the edge of the house's safety zone, the cool breeze ruffling my hair as I stared at the structure that had once been my home. Carter and Emma stood beside me, their eyes also locked on the house, though their expressions were that of disbelief. I still can't believe you're doing this, Emma muttered, shaking her head. This place is worth $1 million, Irene. Tearing it down feels like such a waste. I smiled at her, though there was a hint of steel behind it. I know it seems that way, but it's not just about the money, I explained, my gaze never leaving the house. This is about making a point, about taking back control. Carter raised an eyebrow, clearly trying to understand. And this was Leon's idea, I nodded. He suggested it when we talked about what to do with the house. I've moved on from this place, but Miles and his family still think they have some claim over it. Leon said the best way to sever that tie was to make sure there's nothing left for them to cling to. Emma let out a low whistle. That's some serious revenge. I can't say I blame you, though. I chuckled softly. I have to admit, it's satisfying. He and his family thought they could push me around, take everything from me. But this is me saying I'm done with them. There's no going back. The sound of engines starting up filled the air as the demolition crew got into position. Just then, my phone suddenly vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out, and my heart sank as I saw Miles' name flash across the screen. Reluctantly, I opened the message. It was worse than I could have imagined. A humiliating text from my ex-husband. Miles filled the screen. But it wasn't just the cruel words that stung. It was the information he had just publicized. My address, the location where I was supposed to feel safe, was now exposed for all to see. My mind raced with the implications. Without the protection of a pack, I was a sitting duck. Rogues and enemies alike would see me as easy prey, especially with Miles painting a target on my back. The familiar fear clawed at me. But this time it wasn't just about me. I instinctively placed a hand on my belly, the life inside me suddenly feeling more vulnerable than ever. How could he do this? I thought. How could he be so heartless? Carter and Emma exchanged worried glances as they saw my face pale. Irene, what's wrong? Emma asked, concerned. Wordlessly, I handed them the phone. As they read the message, their expressions darkened. That bastard, Carter muttered under his breath. He's completely lost it. Emma's eyes widened with realization, and she quickly turned to me. Irene, this changes everything. Leon's proposal, it's more timely than ever. You need to bond with a pack for your safety and the babies. I clenched my teeth, anger boiling beneath the surface. Miles doesn't care about anything but himself, I spat. He'd see me dead before he let me move on. Emma placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. Irene, you're right to be furious. But this isn't just about revenge anymore. It's about survival. I could feel the truth in her words pressing down on me. She was right. As much as I despised Miles, this wasn't just a game of spite. My life and the life of my pup were at stake. Taking a deep breath, I gathered my thoughts. There's something else, I began hesitantly. Leon and we've already slept together. Carter and Emma both gasped in unison. What? Emma nearly shrieked, unable to contain her shock. Carter shook his head in disbelief. Irene, are you serious? You and Leon? I nodded, feeling the flush of embarrassment rise to my cheeks. It just happened. I didn't plan it, but now everything is even more complicated. Emma looked at me with a mixture of concern and seriousness. Irene, if you're pregnant, and it's not Leon's, you have to think about what that means. No alpha could tolerate his partner bearing another alpha's pup. It's territoriality, I finished for her. I know how strong it is. Miles was the same way. Emma's eyes softened as she spoke, her tone more gentle. Maybe it's time to consider an abortion, Irene. If Leon finds out. Her words trailed off, and I knew she was right. Leon might not react kindly to being with him while I was pregnant with Miles' child, despite knowing that I am knocked up during our sex session. Werewolves were possessive by nature, and Leon would be no exception. Still, I couldn't bear the thought of getting rid of this baby, the only pure thing left from my past. I remained silent for a moment, contemplating my options. Emma and Carter waited, watching me intently. Finally, I shook my head. No, I said firmly. I won't give up this child. This pup has nothing to do with Miles. It's mine, and I'll protect it, no matter what. Carter sighed, but gave me a small, encouraging smile. It's your choice after all. In any way, you have our support. Just as I was about to thank him, I saw movement in the distance. My heart dropped when I recognized the figures approaching us. It's Miles and Thea, I announced. They're coming this way. Carter and Emma quickly turned to face the approaching pair, their postures changing. As Miles and Thea drew closer, I straightened my spine, preparing myself for whatever confrontation lay ahead. What do you want? I called out. Miles' face was set in a hard scowl, while Thea's expression was smug. We've come to negotiate, Miles said coldly. We want the house back. I let out a bitter laugh. Negotiate? You've got to be kidding. After everything you've done, you think you can just waltz in here and demand I hand over the house. Thea stepped forward, her voice dripping with condescension. You're not acting like a former Luna. Irene, you should know better than to make enemies within the pack. I met her gaze without flinching. I'm not a Luna anymore, I shot back. And I have no obligation to consider the pack's interests. You both betrayed me, remember? Miles' eyes narrowed. Irene, this house holds memories. We deserve it more than you do. I folded my arms, standing my ground. Too bad, I replied, my voice steely. The house is gone. It's already been sold and the new buyer wants to tear it down. There's nothing left for you. Miles' face twisted in anger, and Thea looked equally furious. You sold it, Thea hissed. To who? Before I could respond, a familiar voice interrupted. That would be me. Leon appeared, stepping out from behind a row of trees, his expression cold and calculating. Miles' face drained of color as he realized who he was facing. Leon ignored Miles' shocked expression and addressed me directly. Irene, I hope you don't mind if I finish what we started. I smirked, feeling a surge of satisfaction. Be my guest. Leon turned back to Miles and Thea, his tone mocking. I hope you enjoy the show. This is what happens to property that belongs to your pack. Thea's face twisted with rage. You can't do this. I'll expose everything. Everything Irene has done. I shrugged, unfazed. Go ahead, Thea. I'd love to see what you think you can expose. Thea, in her foolishness, pulled out her phone and began recording, as if that would stop us. But I just smiled, knowing she had no power here. And then, with a roar of machinery, Leon signaled the demolition crew. He personally drove a heavy machine toward the house, grinning as the first wall came crashing down. Miles and Thea could only watch, helpless and defeated. Irene's point of view. Thea's foolish actions ignited Miles' fury like nothing else. The moment she began live streaming the house being leveled, the full weight of the situation hit him. If this footage got out, his pack would be the laughingstock of every pack in the region. His blood boiled as the implications set in. Without thinking, Matthew's hand lashed out, harshly knocking Thea's phone from her grasp. Obviously, the phone fell with a loud thud, and the sound of it shattering against the ground echoed ominously in the air. Thea's face contorted in shock and undisguised grievance, her eyes filling with tears that she dared not let fall. I couldn't help myself. The words spilled from my lips before I could stop them. Miles, it seems your new Luna is as brainless as she is beautiful. How fitting. Miles' face darkened, his eyes flashing dangerously as he whipped around to face me. But he didn't have the luxury of time to respond to my provocation. His attention was drawn back to the scene unfolding before us, the demolition of the house, a symbol of his family's honor and the pride of his pack. As the heavy machinery moved closer to the structure, Miles' composure crumbled. He couldn't just stand by and watch the house be destroyed. With a burst of energy, he rushed forward, intent on stopping the demolition himself if necessary. But before he could get too far, a group of burly, muscular werewolf warriors emerged from the shadows, blocking his path. These weren't just any wolves, they were elite, their sheer size and presence radiating power. "Step aside," Miles barked authoritatively. "I'm the alpha of the B-Pack, and I command you to leave." But the warriors didn't budge. They stood firm, their expressions indifferent to his command. It took only a moment for him to realize these weren't his warriors. They belonged to another pack entirely. His heart sank as the realization hit him like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just a random act of defiance. There was someone behind it, someone powerful enough to send their own warriors to guard the demolition of his family's legacy. Miles' gaze shifted back to me, his eyes blazing with anger and accusation. "You've betrayed us, Irene," he snarled. "You've sold us out to our enemies." I met his glare with a steady, unyielding gaze. "Betray you?" I echoed, my voice cold and calm. "I'm no longer a member of your pack, Alpha Miles. You made sure of that. So how could I betray something I'm no longer a part of?" His fury only grew with my words, but I didn't care. I was no longer the meek Luna who would cower in the face of his wrath. I had nothing left to lose, and I refused to let him intimidate me any longer. Miles' fists clenched at his sides, his knuckles turning white. He knew he was trapped. The elite warriors before him were too powerful to challenge, and without his pack support, he was outnumbered and outmatched. The house, his family's honor, his pack's pride, was about to be reduced to rubble, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. As the wall of the house crumbled under the force of the demolition equipment, I could see the devastation in Miles' eyes. The arm of the heavy machinery swung like a giant hammer, crashing into the house over and over again. Carter and Emma stood nearby, their faces alight with excitement, and their phones raised high to capture every moment of the shocking scene. Their live streams would spread this downfall far and wide, the ultimate humiliation for Miles and his pack. Miles' eyes bulged with rage as he saw the live stream going out to the world. "Stop recording," he bellowed, his voice hoarse with desperation. He tried to lunge at Carter and Emma, to snatch away their phones and end the broadcast, but the elite warriors held him back with ease. They restrained him effortlessly, their expressions blank as they followed Leon's orders. Amid his desperate roars and the dust clouding the air, the house crumbled, the walls and roof collapsing inward as the machinery tore it apart. Brick by brick, the structure was reduced to nothing but rubble. The sound of destruction was deafening, but it was the sight of it that truly captivated me. I couldn't tear my eyes away as the house fell apart, piece by piece. I felt something deep within me stir. I recognized it for what it was, liberation. My mouth curled up into a small, satisfied smile. The destruction of the house marked the end of something significant. My last tie to the B-Pack was now gone. I was free, truly and utterly free. For the first time since my divorce to Miles, I felt like I could finally breathe again. But just as I was beginning to savor this newfound freedom, everything happened so fast. Miles, in a final act of desperation and rage, took advantage of a momentary distraction among the warriors. He broke free of their hold and lunged at me, his eyes wild with fury. Time seemed to slow as I saw him coming, his face twisted with anger, his hands reaching out as if to strangle the life from me. I didn't have time to react, but I didn't need to. Before Miles could reach me, Leon jumped down from the cab of the heavy machinery. He moved like a blur, a streak of power and precision. In one swift motion, he kicked Miles square in the chest, sending him flying backward and crashing to the ground. Miles lay there, stunned and gasping for breath, the wind knocked out of him. He tried to rise, but Leon was already standing over him, his presence radiating danger and authority. Leon's eyes burned with a cold fury as he looked down at Miles, who was now completely at his mercy. "Stay down, Alpha Miles," Leon growled sarcastically. "You've already lost everything. Don't make it worse for yourself." Miles looked up at Leon with a mixture of fear and hatred, but he didn't dare move. He knew he was beaten, not just physically, but in every possible way. "Trust me, this is not the end," he swore, spitting disgustingly at my foot. Irene's point of view. "Leon, are you okay?" I asked slightly with worry. The sight of Miles lunging at me had been terrifying, but the thought of Leon getting hurt in the process was even worse. My heart was pounding in my chest as I watched him, waiting for his reply. Leon turned to me, a gentle smile softening his sharp features. "I'm fine, Irene," he assured me calmly. "It takes more than that to knock me down." I breathed a sigh of relief, feeling the tension ease out of my body. "Good," I murmured, trying to steady my nerves. Without thinking, I reached out and placed my hand on his chest, right over his heart. I could feel it beating strongly beneath my palm, a reassuring rhythm that calmed me. Leon's smile widened, and he covered my hand with his own, his thumb brushing lightly over my knuckles. "You're worried about me?" he asked, a teasing lilt in his voice. "Of course I am," I replied, meeting his gaze. "You could have been hurt." His eyes sparkled with amusement, and for a moment, the world seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of us standing there, connected by the simple touch of our hands. It was a moment of intimacy that I hadn't expected, but it felt natural right even. "Carlyle," Leon called over his shoulder, his tone abruptly shifting to one of command. "Finish the demolition." His beta, Carlyle, nodded, and immediately turned back to the task at hand, barking orders to the crew. They wanted to pack up the broken chunks on the ground, dismantling them into smaller bits. The sound of machinery starting up again filled the air, but the peace was short-lived. Miles, who had been silent up until now, suddenly let out a growl of frustration. "Wait, Irene, have you slept with him?" he demanded, his voice dripping with jealousy and anger. His eyes burned with accusation as he looked between Leon and me, his possessiveness flaring up like an ugly, twisted beast. His words hit me like a slap to the face. I felt a surge of anger rise up within me, hotter and more intense than anything I'd felt in a long time. How dare he, after everything he had done to me, after all the pain and humiliation he had caused, he still had the nerve to question my choices, to act as if he had any right to know what I didn't do. "It's none of your business, Miles," I snapped. I met his gaze with a glare, refusing to back down. "We're divorced. You have no right to ask me anything." Miles's face twisted with rage, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. For a moment, it looked like he might try to attack again, but he held himself back, barely. The jealousy and fury in his eyes were clear, though, and they made my skin crawl. How had I ever been married to this man? The possessiveness he displayed was terrifying. Leon, sensing the change in the atmosphere, stepped closer to me. You heard her, Miles, Leon said. This is none of your concern. Miles's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, his eyes narrowing in contempt. It was clear that he was seething, but there was nothing he could do. Not now, not here. The power had shifted, and he was no longer the one in control. Irene, let's go, Leon said softly, his hand still resting over mine. There's nothing left for us. Leon suddenly leaned in closer to Miles, a smirk playing on his lips. Ah, wait, actually. Irene did mention something in bed, he said with a slow, deliberate drawl. She said I'm better than you ever were. I felt my cheeks flush, embarrassment creeping in despite the sense of satisfaction. It was a low blow even for Leon, but I couldn't deny the small thrill of triumph that accompanied it. I knew that would wound Miles's pride deeply, perhaps even more than losing the house. Miles's face contorted in anger, his expression darkening into something almost feral. Did you do all this just for revenge? He roared, the words practically spat out in fury. I crossed my arms, my posture as defiant as my tone. Revenge, maybe. Or maybe it's just about finally taking back my life after all the lies and betrayal. I turned my gaze to Thea, who stood by Miles's side, trying to look small and helpless. And you, I added with disdain. Stop acting like the victim. You knew exactly what you were doing. Don't pretend now that you care about anything but yourself. Thea, still playing her pitiful role, whined, Irene, you're going to ruin Mom's dreams. How can you do this to her? I couldn't help but roll my eyes. The hypocrisy was staggering. Please, Thea, our mother didn't want you to steal your sister's husband either. Do you think she'd be proud of you now? Thea's face fell, her act crumbling under the weight of the truth. She looked to Miles for support, but he was too consumed by his own anger to offer any. Miles, however, wasn't done. His voice soon cut through the air. I'll sue you, Irene. I'll take you to the werewolf court and make sure you're punished for this. You won't get away with it. I was taken aback by his threat. The sheer ruthlessness in his words struck a chord within me, revealing a side of him I hadn't fully recognized before. This wasn't the man I had once loved. This was someone entirely different, someone who would stop at nothing to see me suffer. I took a step back, realizing just how much I had underestimated him. Miles wasn't just hurt or angry. He was out for blood. This was the true face of the man I had been married to for years. How had I been so blind? The shock of Miles's threat hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood there, my fists clenched, trying to keep my anger in check. It wasn't that I was afraid of facing the werewolf court. I'd faced worse. But the thought of being detained beforehand sent a cold shiver down my spine. During detention, they would conduct a physical examination. If they found the alpha pup growing inside me, things would get much more complicated. The very idea of it made my heart pound in my chest. My mind raced, searching for a way to steer the conversation away from this dangerous territory. I needed to think, needed to find a way out of this without revealing the truth. But before I could say anything, I heard Leon's cold laugh. The sound definitely did nothing but pull me out of my thoughts. Do you intend to punish my future Luna? His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that sent a chill down my spine. Sweetly possessive. Irene's point of view. The moment Leon's alpha tone rang out, I felt the raw power in his voice. It rippled through the air, commanding attention, and I couldn't help but notice how the other werewolves shifted uneasily. Even the toughest among them couldn't hide their discomfort. But Matthew, being an alpha himself, wasn't about to back down. He met Leon's challenge head on unleashing his own alpha tone in defiance. The clash of their wills filled the space, heavy and oppressive. Before the tension could escalate any further, Leon's beta swung the excavator's arm toward Matthew. The massive mechanical arm cut through the air with a terrifying speed, aimed directly at him. Matthew had to clumsily dodge out of the way, and I saw the panic flash across his face. His movements were frantic, uncoordinated. So unlike the controlled alpha I had once known. No! Thea's scream pierced the air as she cowered behind him. She must have thought Leon would kill Matthew right then with the machine arm. The excavator's arm stopped just inches away from them, looming over their trembling forms. The sight of Matthew and Thea, both terrified and crumpled on the ground, brought a surge of satisfaction I hadn't expected. This was justice, I thought. This was the retribution they deserved after everything they'd put me through. Leon gave a thumbs up to his beta in the driver's seat, a small gesture that felt strangely childlike amidst the chaos. Watching him, I felt my heart flutter. There was something endearing about the way he handled the situation. Powerful yet playful, serious yet with a hint of mischief. It was a side of him I hadn't seen before, and it made me feel a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. Matthew's face darkened with rage as he glared at me, then turned his fury on Leon. "You think this is over?" he growled. "I'm going to report this to the werewolf court. You'll pay for this, Leon. You'll pay enough compensation to restore my reputation." I couldn't help but find the irony in his words. "Matthew," I said, my tone dripping with sarcasm, "the pack's reputation is in shambles because of you, not because of this house. You're the one who betrayed your Luna. That's where the real damage came from, not some demolished building that's already been compensated for." Matthew's eyes narrowed as he turned to me, his lips curling into a sneer. "Oh, Irene," he began mockingly. "Still playing the victim, I see. But don't worry, I'll make sure the werewolf court knows just how much of a..." Before he could finish, his phone rang, cutting him off mid-sentence. The irritation on his face was almost comical as he pulled it out, glancing at the screen. His expression changed quickly, his arrogance faltering as he answered the call. I could hear the unmistakable sound of his father's voice, scolding him harshly. Matthew's confidence visibly deflated as he muttered a few words of acknowledgement before hanging up. Leon didn't miss a beat. He smirked, his eyes glinting with amusement. "Trouble at home, Matthew?" he asked sarcastically. "Maybe you should get going. Sounds like your father needs you back at the pack." I couldn't hold back my laughter as I watched Matthew's face twist with frustration. He looked at me, then at Leon, clearly torn between lashing out and retreating. But in the end, he just clenched his fists and turned away. Thea, who had been cowering in the background, quickly scrambled to follow him, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Let's go, Matthew," she whispered urgently, tugging at his arm. "Yeah, Matthew," I added with a grin. "You don't want to keep Daddy waiting." I rolled my eyes at them. He shot me one last furious glare before stalking off, Thea hurrying after him. The sight of them retreating in disgrace filled me with a sense of triumph. It was a small victory, but a satisfying one nonetheless. They disappeared from view, and I turned to Leon, who was still smirking. "Well, that was entertaining," I said with nothing but pure amusement. Leon chuckled, his hand resting on my shoulder in a gesture that was both reassuring and intimate. "You handled that perfectly," he said, all smiles. I smiled up at him, feeling a surge of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you," I admitted, "and honestly, I've never felt better." We stood there for a moment, watching as the last remnants of Matthew's influence faded away. It was over, and I was free. Shortly after Matthew and Thea left in disgrace, Carter and Emma approached me with bright smiles on their faces. "So, Irene," Carter began, his eyes twinkling with curiosity, "what's next on your agenda? We were thinking of hitting up that new boutique downtown. Want to join us?" Emma nodded eagerly. "Yeah, it'll be fun. You could use a little retail therapy after all this drama." I was about to agree, the idea of spending some light-hearted time with my friends sounding appealing, when I suddenly felt a pair of strong arms wrap around my waist from behind. Leon pulled me close, pressing a kiss to the side of my neck. I shivered at the warmth of his breath against my skin, feeling my resolve weaken instantly. "I'm afraid Irene's schedule is already booked," Leon announced, playfully but firm in his intent. "She belongs to me for the rest of the day." Carter and Emma exchanged knowing looks, their smiles turning teasing. "Oh, really?" Carter drawled, raising an eyebrow. "Looks like we've been officially dismissed." Emma laughed, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Guess we'll have to shop without you, Irene. Do have much fun." I felt a flush of heat rise to my cheeks, torn between amusement and a bit of helplessness at how easily Leon had claimed me. Leon's grip tightened slightly as he leaned in, his lips brushing my ear. "I want you to join my pack today," he whispered, his voice low and filled with intent. "I want you to belong to me, Irene." Irene's point of view. Leon's deep, magnetic voice resonated in my ear as he whispered, "I want you to join my pack today, Irene. I want you to belong to me." His words made my feet curl, and I could feel my body responding involuntarily, heat pooling in my core. I didn't want to be so easily swayed, but Leon had a way of getting under my skin, making me feel things I hadn't felt in so long. I turned slightly in his arms, meeting his intense gaze. "You're pretty direct, aren't you?" I replied, trying to keep my tone light, even though my heart was pounding in my chest. He smirked, his blue eyes darkening with desire. "When I want something, I don't beat around the bush." His hand trailed down my arm, sending sparks of electricity through my skin. "So, what do you say, Irene? Will you be mine?" I bit my lip, trying to maintain some semblance of control. But deep down I already knew my answer. There was something about Leon that drew me in, something I couldn't resist, and maybe I didn't want to resist anymore. "All right," I finally said. "I'll join your pack." A satisfied smile curved his lips, and before I knew it, Leon was leading me to his pack house. The place was grand, with large wooden doors and intricate carvings on the walls. It felt warm, inviting even. We were greeted by Carlisle, Leon's beta, who had already prepared everything for the joining ceremony. A large bowl of water was set on a table in the center of the room, the surface shimmering under the soft glow of the overhead lights. Carlisle gave me a respectful nod. "It's an honor to welcome you to the Golden Crest Pack, Irene." I nodded back, feeling nervous and excited. "Thank you, Carlisle." Leon took my hand, guiding me to the bowl. "This won't take long," he assured me. "Just a small cut, and then you'll be officially part of the pack." I nodded, watching as he pricked his fingertip with a small silver blade. A drop of blood welled up on his skin before falling into the water, sending ripples across the surface. I followed his lead, doing the same with my own finger. The pain was brief, a sharp sting, but it quickly faded as my blood mixed with his in the bowl. Leon squeezed my hand, his eyes locked on mine as we spoke the oath together. The words were ancient, powerful, binding us together in a way I hadn't expected. As we finished, I felt a strange sensation wash over me, a connection, a bond forming with Leon's pack. It was as if I could sense them, feel their presence in the back of my mind. "It's done," Leon said softly, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "You're one of us now." I took a deep breath, letting the reality of it sink in. I was no longer alone. I had a pack again, a new family, and with Leon by my side, I felt a sense of security I hadn't known in a long time. Leon turned to Carlisle, speaking to him authoritatively. "Arrange a welcome party for Irene. I want everyone to know she's part of the Golden Crest Pack now." Carlisle nodded, already moving to carry out the orders. "Of course, Alpha. I'll make sure everything is perfect." Leon looked back at me, his expression softening as he brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. "How do you feel?" I smiled, a genuine one this time, strangely at peace, like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Good, he murmured, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Because you are Irene, you're home now. Hai Tsang. Quan. Getting to the welcome party, I felt Leon's hand resting lightly on the small of my back, guiding me through the crowd. The atmosphere was lively, filled with laughter and music. I could feel eyes on me, but they weren't hostile like I had expected. Instead, there was warmth, a welcoming energy that put me at ease. Leon led me to a group of people standing near the center of the room. Irene, I'd like you to meet the core members of the Golden Crest Pack's leadership, he said. I smiled, feeling a little nervous, but determined to make a good impression. It's nice to meet all of you. The first person to step forward was Carlisle, Leon's beta, whom I'd already met. He nodded at me, a hint of a smile on his usually stern face. Welcome to the pack, Irene. We're glad to have you. Thank you, Carlisle, I replied, genuinely appreciating his warmth. Then, a tall, broad-shouldered man with sharp features stepped forward. He had a presence about him that was impossible to ignore. I'm Klaus, the Gamma of the Golden Crest Pack, he introduced himself. It's good to have you with us. I nodded, feeling the weight of his gaze. He was studying me intently. Thank you, Klaus. The introductions continued, and as we chatted, I found myself relaxing more and more. Everyone was so welcoming, and it felt good to be part of something again. After a while, Carlisle cleared his throat, drawing my attention. By now, Leon had moved to greet other guests. Irene, he began, his expression turning more serious. I owe you an apology. I blinked in surprise, chuckling in between. An apology? For what? Carlisle sighed, glancing at Leon before looking back at me. It's about Sophia, my sister. She's the one who troubled you before by pouring cold water on you. My eyes widened as I recalled the incident. I hadn't realized Sophia was Carlisle's sister. Oh, I didn't know. Carlisle nodded. Leon handled the situation, but I still feel responsible. After the incident, he decided it was best to send her abroad for studies. It was the only way to ensure she wouldn't bother you again. I turned to Leon, surprised by this revelation. He had made mention of it, but I didn't think he would go through with it. I thought he said that just to ease my anger. Leon shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips as he came closer to us. He has been listening in on our conversation from where he was earlier. Sophia was causing trouble, and I couldn't have that. Plus, she's Carlisle's sister. Sending her away was the best decision for everyone involved. I felt a mixture of emotions, gratitude, surprise, and something warm that I couldn't quite place. Leon had gone out of his way to protect me, even from his own pack members. Thank you, I said softly, looking into Leon's eyes. I appreciate what you did. Leon squeezed my hand gently. Trust me to always look out for you, milady. The Gamma, Klaus, with his lively personality, grabbed several bottles from the bar, his smile widening as he placed them on the table. All right, everyone. Let's toast to the arrival of our future Luna, he declared enthusiastically. I couldn't help but smile at his energy, but the thought of drinking alcohol made me pause. I had to be careful, especially now. I was pregnant. Thank you, Klaus, I said warmly, holding up a hand as he started pouring. But I'll have to pass on the alcohol. How about some juice instead? Klaus raised an eyebrow, a little surprised, but he quickly recovered with a grin. Juice it is, but only because it's you, Irene. As he handed me a glass of juice, I continued. It's important to celebrate, but I've got to keep a clear head to keep up with all of you. I wouldn't want to miss a thing on my first day. That got a round of laughter from the group, and I could feel the tension in my shoulders easing. Despite my refusal, the atmosphere remained light, and I was grateful for that. I could see that my choice hadn't dampened anyone's spirits. If anything, it made me feel more accepted, like they understood and respected my decision. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations, laughter, and warmth. I found myself fitting in more easily than I'd anticipated. When the party finally wound down, Leon caught my hand, his eyes gleaming with something I couldn't quite place. "Ready to call it a night?" he asked in a low tone. I nodded, suddenly aware of how close we were. "Yeah, I think so." Leon didn't waste any time. He led me out of the room, his grip firm but gentle, guiding me through the winding hallways of the pack house until we reached his bedroom. The door clicked shut behind us, and the air between us shifted, charged with an undeniable tension. Before I could say anything, Leon's lips were on mine, his kiss deep and demanding. It was like all the control he'd shown throughout the evening had finally snapped. We tumbled onto the bed together, Leon's point of view. My cousin, Noah, sat across from me, a satisfied grin on his face, as he sifted through the final details of our agreement. He was the alpha of the Dark Moon Pack, but we worked together. The ink was barely dry, but that wasn't what excited me. My thoughts kept drifting back to the earlier conversation I'd had with Irene and the sweet victory I'd scored against Miles. As Noah signed the last page, I couldn't help but share my triumph with him. "You should have seen the look on Miles's face," I said in between our conversation, barely containing my glee. His precious meeting hall, that house, was reduced to rubble, and now the Gerard pack is left scrambling to regain any semblance of respect. No one will ever trust them again. Noah leaned back in his chair, chuckling. "I heard about that. You really hit him where it hurts. The meeting hall was their pride and joy, wasn't it?" I nodded satisfactorily. It was more than just a building to them. It was a symbol of their authority, of Miles's so-called leadership. "Now it's nothing but dust." "Good," Noah said, raising an eyebrow. "Miles had it coming for a long time. He's been making enemies left and right, and you just gave everyone a reason to see him for what he truly is, a weak alpha who can't even protect his own pack." "Exactly," I replied, the memory of Miles's desperation still fresh in my mind. "I didn't just take down the building, I shattered whatever respect anyone had left for him. And the best part, Irene was there to witness it all." Noah's expression changed. He was curious. "Irene, huh? You've mentioned her a few times now. She seems to be more than just a witness to your revenge." I shrugged, but couldn't hide the smile that crept onto my face. "She's something else, Noah, strong, determined. And, well, let's just say she's not what I expected when I first met her." Noah gave me a knowing look. "Sounds like you're in deep, Leon. Be careful, though. Women like her can be dangerous, especially when they've been hurt before." "I know," I admitted, my thoughts briefly flashing back to the moments we'd shared. "But there's something about her, something that makes me want to protect her, even if it's from herself." Noah didn't press further, instead clapping me on the shoulder as he stood up. "Just don't let your guard down, cousin. The last thing you need is to let your emotions cloud your judgment." I nodded, appreciating his concern, but feeling confident in my decisions. "Don't worry, Noah. I've got everything under control. And besides, Miles has got bigger problems now than me or Irene." I recounted the details of Miles's humiliation, filling Noah in on some points he missed. Not long after, I noticed a shift in Noah's demeanor. His usual light-heartedness was gone, replaced by a more serious countenance. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing as he listened to me. "You seem to be focusing a lot on Miles's ex-wife," Noah finally remarked. "I hope you're not letting yourself get too wrapped up in this, Leon. Love can be deceiving, especially when it's mixed with revenge." I paused, feeling a twinge of irritation at Noah's insinuation. "Irene's different, Noah. She's been through hell as Miles's Luna. The way he treated her, the way he discarded her, it's unforgivable. I'm not about to let her suffer anymore. Noah sighed, shaking his head slightly. I'm not saying she didn't suffer, but don't forget, she was successful as the Jared Wolfpack's Luna because of her bond with Miles. That bond, even if it's broken, still holds power over her. And you and Irene, your bond isn't exactly blessed by the moon goddess, is it? I felt a flash of anger at his words, but I kept my cool. For some reason, the connection between Irene and I wasn't that strong. I was the only one who saw her as my mate, who felt the bond. On Irene's part, she didn't feel it but only became close to me. Though I concluded that it was because of her nature, she seems more human than a werewolf. That I had to figure it out, as I wasn't sure yet. It doesn't matter. I'm not looking for some divine blessing. What Irene and I have is real, and I'm going to protect her, with or without the moon goddess's approval. Noah's gaze softened slightly, but he still looked unconvinced. I get it, Leon. You want to protect her, but you can't ignore the reality of the mate bond. Even if Miles rejected her, that connection doesn't just disappear. And after everything she's been through, what if Miles tries to change? What if Irene considers going back to him? The thought sent a surge of anger through me, and I clenched my fists at my sides. Miles is nothing to her now. He's married to Irene's sister, and they're expecting a child. Irene would never go back to him, not after everything he's done. Noah studied me for a moment, then sighed again, leaning back in his chair. I hope you're right, Leon, but remember, people can surprise you. The last thing you need is to be blindsided by something you didn't see coming. The conversation left a bitter taste in my mouth, and I could feel the tension between us as we wrapped up our meeting. When Noah left the office, I found myself replaying his words, thinking through his warnings. I reached for my glass, gripping it tightly while I stared out the window. The thought of Irene ever leaving me, of her returning to Miles, made me angry. Never. That can't happen. The glass in my hand suddenly shattered under the pressure of my grip, shards cutting into my palm. But the pain was nothing compared to the thought of losing her. Noah might be worried about the mate bond, but I wouldn't let anything take Irene away from me. If she ever even thought about leaving, I'd make sure she had no choice but to come back. I'd protect her, yes, but I'd also make sure she understood one thing: she belonged to me, and I wasn't about to let her go. Irene's point of view. I chose a discreet hospital for my checkup, hoping to avoid any chance of running into Miles. The last thing I needed was more drama, especially when I was trying to keep this pregnancy under the radar. Emma's friend, the doctor, was waiting for us when we arrived. She greeted us with a knowing smile, leading us to a private room at the back of the clinic. "You are looking very radiant," she commented, and I found myself blushing at her words. "Thank you," I replied. As I lay on the examination table, I couldn't help but feel a bit anxious. I wasn't sure if it was the unfamiliar surroundings or the fact that I was still keeping so many secrets. The doctor's gentle voice broke through my thoughts. "You know, Irene, it's not the best idea to come for a gynecological exam right after sex," she remarked with a slight smirk. Emma's laughter filled the room, echoing off the sterile walls. "You just can't wait, can you?" she teased, nudging my arm. I felt my face flush with embarrassment. "Shut up, Emma," I muttered, trying to hide my embarrassment with a weak glare. Emma just laughed harder, enjoying my discomfort. The doctor moved on from the teasing and began the examination. My heart pounded as I waited for her to speak, each second stretching out into what felt like an eternity. Finally, she looked up from her work and smiled at me reassuringly. "The fetus is very stable, Irene," she said, her voice calm and reassuring. "You're over 20 weeks now, and everything looks good. Just make sure you're careful and avoid anything too strenuous, especially in the bedroom," she added with a teasing tone. Emma was quick to jump on that comment, waggling her eyebrows at me in a way that made my cheeks burn even hotter. Hear that? No acrobatics in bed, Irene, I groaned, covering my face with my hands. I'm going to kill you, Emma, I grumbled, though I couldn't help but smile a little. It was nice, in a way, to have something light-hearted to focus on, even if it was at my expense. Once the checkup was over, I thanked the doctor, and we left the clinic. The fresh air outside was a relief after the tension I hadn't realized I was holding inside. I felt lighter knowing that everything was okay with the baby. But at the same time, I couldn't ignore the thoughts that lingered in the back of my mind. How long could I keep this up? How long could I keep Leon in the dark? Emma's teasing continued as we walked to the car, but I was only half listening. Soon after, Emma and I met up with Carter at a nearby cafe. We decided to pick up where we left off yesterday and continue our shopping trip. As we wandered through the mall, my eyes kept drifting toward the baby section, my heart fluttering at the sight of tiny clothes and toys. Emma noticed my gaze and nudged me with her elbow. See something you like? She teased, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Carter, always quick on the uptake, grinned. Why don't we take a look? I'm sure we can find something adorable for your little one. I hesitated, biting my lip. I don't know. I mean, what if? Emma cut me off, pulling me toward the store. No, what ifs, Irene. Let's get your pup some cute clothes. Besides, it'll be fun. Before I knew it, we were inside the store, surrounded by racks of baby clothes in every color and style imaginable. My heart warmed as I imagined my pup wearing some of the outfits, and before I could stop myself, I started picking out a few things. This is so cute, I murmured, holding up a tiny onesie with little wolves on it. The reality of my situation hit me like a ton of bricks. My pup was going to need these clothes soon. I couldn't continue to ignore raising the topic and discussing it with Leon. Emma and Carter watched me with knowing smiles. Let's get it then, Carter said, and let's grab some more essentials while we're at it. We ended up spending over $3,000 on baby supplies, crib sheets, onesies, bottles, you name it. By the time we finished, we were all a bit overwhelmed by the sheer volume of stuff we had to pack into Carter's car. Emma looked at the back seat, filled to the brim with bags. Irene, I had no idea you had this kind of spending power, she said, half joking, half impressed. I shrugged, a small smile playing on my lips. I just want to make sure my pup has everything it needs. When we got back to Emma and Carter's shared apartment, we spent the next hour organizing the baby items. As we worked, Emma glanced at me, her expression growing more serious. So, she began carefully, when are you planning to discuss this with Leon? I froze, a bottle in hand. The thought had been gnawing at me for days. I know I have to tell him, I admitted, setting the bottle down. But I'm terrified. What if he can't accept the pup? Carter walked over and placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. Irene, you've got to be honest with him. If you want this relationship to work, you can't keep evading this. The earlier the better. If you keep going like this without discussing it, things could go bad later. The earlier the better. Emma nodded in agreement. Exactly. It's better if you raise the topic. At least then, you can explain everything. Their words sank in, and I knew they were right. With a deep breath, I pulled out my phone and composed a message to Leon. Can you come over to my apartment tonight? There's something important I need to tell you. As soon as I hit send, a strange sense of relief washed over me. My fears didn't feel as heavy anymore. I turned to Emma and Carter, offering them a grateful smile. Thank you both. I don't know what I'd do without you. Emma grinned, giving me a quick hug. We're here for you, Irene. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together. Carter nodded in agreement, adding, and if Leon tries anything stupid, we'll deal with him too. We all laughed, but underneath the humor, there was a shared understanding of the uncertainty ahead. With a final goodbye, I headed back to my apartment, a bit scared as I anticipated Leon's arrival. On my way back, I suddenly received a call from Miles. Obviously, I didn't want to pick up at first, but I did after some hesitation. "Irene, you need to return to the pack now." His tone sounded more like a command to me. Who the fuck was he to order me around? "Why should I do your bidding?" "Your mother, Maria. She is critically ill," he said, his voice carrying an urgency I'd never heard before. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My hand trembled so violently that I dropped the phone as it hit the car floor. But I didn't care about that. I didn't care about anything except the fact that my mother was in danger. He knew how much my mother meant to me, how she was the only family I had left that still mattered. Without another word, I spun the car around, heading straight for the Gerard Wolfpack Hospital. The thought of returning there, of facing Miles and everyone else after everything that had happened, filled me with dread. But I couldn't think about that now. I had to be with my mother. I had to see her. The road blurred as I sped toward the hospital, my mind racing with 1,000 possibilities. What had happened to her? How could she be so ill when she had been fine the last time I saw her? Was this just another one of Miles's tricks, a way to manipulate me? But then again, even Miles wouldn't stoop so low as to use my mother's health against me. Would he? I shook the thoughts away, focusing on getting to the hospital as quickly as possible. Whatever awaited me there, I had to face it head on for my mother. Irene's point of view. Arriving at the Gerard Wolfpack Hospital, my heart raced with nothing but fear. I pushed open the doors, my eyes scanning the hallways for any sign of Maria. My pulse pounded in my ears as I hurried down the corridors, each step echoing in the sterile environment. Finally, I saw Miles standing outside one of the rooms, his expression unreadable. The dread in my chest intensified, but I forced myself to approach him. "Miles," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Where is she? Where's my mother?" He turned to me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, but it was gone before I could identify it. He simply nodded toward the room, and I rushed inside. What I saw stopped me cold. Maria was lying in the hospital bed, but instead of the frail, dying woman I'd expected, she looked perfectly healthy. There was color in her cheeks, and her eyes were open, watching me with a calmness that sent alarm bells ringing in my head. She wasn't sick, she wasn't dying. I'd been deceived, just like I had suspected. All the urgency, all the fear I'd felt on my way here had been based on a lie. I whirled around to leave, anger boiling in my veins, but Miles was already blocking the doorway. "Going somewhere, Irene?" he asked maliciously. "Get out of my way, Miles," I snapped, trying to push past him, but he didn't budge. "Not so fast," he said coldly. "There's something you need to do first." I narrowed my eyes at him, the anger simmering beneath my skin. "What are you talking about?" Miles's eyes flashed with something dark as he leaned closer, his voice low and threatening. "Thea's condition has worsened since you pulled that stunt with Leon. She's traumatized, to the point where she's at risk of losing our child." I felt a flicker of guilt, but I quickly pushed it aside. Thea wasn't my responsibility. "And now," Miles continued, "she's developed severe anemia. The doctors say she needs a blood transfusion, and you're the only compatible donor available at the moment." My breath caught in my throat as his words sunk in. He wanted me to donate blood to Thea, the very woman who had stolen my husband and tried to destroy my life. The audacity, the sheer gall of it, left me speechless. "No," I said, finally, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "I won't do it." A look of shock flashed across Miles's face, quickly replaced by fury. "You will," he hissed, stepping closer. You will donate your blood to save her and our child. You owe us that much after everything you've done." I felt a sharp pang in my chest as his words twisted the knife deeper. How dare he? How dare he blame me for this? Thea and Miles were the ones who had torn my life apart, not the other way around. But as I stood there, my eyes flicked to Maria, expecting her to say something at least. She was watching me, her gaze pleading, her eyes filled with unshed tears. My stomach twisted in disgust as I realized the truth. Maria had known. She'd been complicit in Miles's scheme, luring me here with false pretenses to manipulate me into saving Thea. The betrayal stung more than I could express. My own mother choosing Thea over me. She has always done it, but I didn't expect her to still be biased in this situation. "I won't do it," I repeated, louder this time, ignoring the way my voice shook. "Find someone else." Miles's expression darkened even further, his eyes narrowing dangerously. "If you refuse, Irene, and something happens to Thea or our child, you will never escape the consequences. This will be on your head." I stiffened, swallowing the rising fear. He didn't know. He couldn't know about the child growing inside me, the secret I had kept hidden from everyone. If he found out, no, I couldn't let that happen. But I couldn't give in either. I couldn't let Miles continue to control my life, not after everything he'd done. Besides, I can't jeopardize my life for anybody. "I'm not responsible for Thea's condition," I said through gritted teeth. "I've given you more than enough. You'll get nothing else from me." Miles stared at me, his jaw clenched, and for a moment I thought he might strike me. But then, to my surprise, he stepped back, his lips curling into a cruel smile. Maria's voice broke through the thick haze of anger swirling around me, pleading, "Irene, please. Just do what Miles asks. Thea is your sister. She's in a fragile state and she needs your help." I spun around to face her, my vision blurred with tears of frustration. "Sister?" I spat out the word like it was poison. "I don't have a sister who would sleep with my husband and get pregnant." Maria's face crumpled with hurt, but I was too angry to care. I could see the guilt in her eyes, the way she tried to justify her betrayal by clinging to the idea of family loyalty. But what about my loyalty? What about the way they had all trampled on my heart, leaving it in pieces? Before Maria could respond, Miles's hand shot out, and a sharp sting exploded across my cheek as his palm connected with my skin. The room fell silent except for the sound of my own ragged breathing. My face burned where he had struck me, but the pain was nothing compared to the searing anger in my chest. "That's enough out of you," Miles growled, his eyes blazing with fury. "You will do as I say, or I'll make sure you regret it." I opened my mouth to retaliate, but before I could, Miles turned to the werewolf doctor standing nearby. "Restrain her. Keep her here until she agrees to the blood transfusion." The werewolf doctor hesitated, his eyes flicking nervously between Miles and me. I could see the conflict in his expression, and I knew why. He was aware of my pregnancy, something Miles clearly hadn't discovered yet. He started to speak up, "Alpha Miles, I don't think," but I wasn't about to let anyone fight this battle for me. "Don't," I interrupted sharply, my eyes locking onto Miles's with a fierceness that surprised even me. I wasn't going to beg or plead. I wasn't going to cower. I was done with that. "You listen to me," I hissed. "I'm no longer part of your pack. I've joined the Golden Crest pack, and if you think for 1 second that I'll just stand by while you illegally detain a member of another pack, then you've lost your mind. The moment I get out of here, I'll report you, and we both know that your Jared Wolfpack can't afford any more bad press." Miles's jaw tightened, his nostrils flaring as he stared me down. For a moment, the air was thick as neither of us was willing to back down. I could see the calculations running through his mind, weighing his options, trying to decide if it was worth the risk. "Just let her go," He waved at the doctor, who shifted and allowed me to pass. As I stood in the hospital corridor, trying to steady my breath and calm my racing heart, I saw Luke stride into the building. The moment he caught sight of my swollen face, his eyes darkened with anger. His fists clenched at his sides as he closed the distance between us. "What the hell happened?" Luke demanded as his gaze shifted to Miles, narrowing with suspicion. Before I could respond, Miles stepped in. "Thea needs a blood transfusion," he said. "Irene's the only one who can donate." Luke's eyes flicked back to me, reading the distress in my expression. His protective instincts kicked in, and without missing a beat he offered, "I'll donate. But I'm not doing a damn thing until I confirm that Thea actually needs it." Miles's face twisted with irritation, but Luke didn't give him a chance to argue. He turned on his heel, his hand gently gripping my elbow as he led me down the hall toward Thea's ward, leaving Miles to do nothing but follow behind us. Immediately we approached the door to Thea's room. The sound of her sharp, scolding voice filtered through the walls. I said, "I wanted ice chips, not water. Are you all incompetent?" She snapped very loudly at a nurse. Luke stopped in his tracks, his lips curling into a sneer. "Doesn't sound like the voice of someone who's on the brink of death," he muttered under his breath, loud enough for both Miles and me to hear. Miles's expression tightened, his fists clenching at his sides. He was caught, and he knew it. Thea's supposed fragility was nothing more than a ploy, a desperate attempt to manipulate me into submission. Luke's eyes bore into Miles, daring him to defend Thea's behavior. But Miles remained silent, his face a mask of barely concealed rage. Luke pushed the door open, revealing Thea reclining in her hospital bed, looking more annoyed than ill. Her eyes widened when she saw us, especially when she noticed the fury radiating off Luke. "Thea," Luke said sarcastically, "you look so unwell." He crossed his arms over his chest, challenging her to keep up the act. Thea blinked, clearly caught off guard by Luke's presence. I'm feeling weak," she stammered, trying to sound pitiful, but her earlier outburst betrayed her. "The doctor said I need a transfusion." Luke's sneer deepened. "Really? Because from what I just heard, you seem pretty capable of tearing into the hospital staff." Thea's eyes darted to Miles, silently begging him to intervene, but Miles' silence spoke volumes. He knew Luke wasn't going to be easily fooled, and the cracks in their plan were becoming glaringly obvious. The nurse returned moments later with the folder in hand, and Luke took it, flipping through the pages with a practiced eye. He had ordered for the nurse to bring it in earlier. His brow furrowed as he read, and when he looked up, his expression was grim. "There's nothing here to suggest that Thea is in need of an urgent transfusion," Luke said, his voice cold. He tossed the folder onto the bed, letting it land in Thea's lap. "Looks like you're out of luck, Miles. Find another way to play your twisted games." Miles' face turned a deep shade of red, his anger barely contained. But there was nothing he could do. Luke had called his bluff, and now there was no way he could force me to comply. Luke turned to me, gently taking my hand. "Let's get out of here, Irene. You don't owe them anything." Irene's point of view. The door to Thea's ward slammed shut behind us, and I could still feel the tension radiating from Luke. We walked in silence through the sterile corridors until we reached the werewolf doctor's office. Luke guided me inside, his hand resting protectively on the small of my back. The doctor greeted us with a concerned expression. "Irene, please take a seat," the doctor said gently, gesturing toward the examination table. I did as she asked, and Luke remained close by, his gaze never leaving my face. The doctor carefully examined the swelling on my cheek, her touch gentle but firm. "You'll be fine," she reassured me after a few moments. "The swelling should go down with some ice, and I'll prescribe you a mild pain reliever." She paused, her eyes flickering to the door as if checking to make sure no one was eavesdropping. "Irene, I have to ask, are you really not considering coming back to the pack?" I stiffened at her words, my heart sinking as I realized where this conversation was heading. "No, I'm not," I replied. "There's nothing left for me here." The doctor's expression shifted from concern to something more pleading. "But you're carrying Alpha Miles' child," she said softly, as if the mere mention of it would change everything. "You must know how important that is to the pack." I felt Luke's body go rigid beside me, and I closed my eyes, bracing myself for what was to come. The room suddenly felt too small, too suffocating. Luke's voice cut through the silence, sharp and demanding. "Is that true, Irene?" he asked, almost angry. I opened my eyes to find him staring at me. There was no point in denying it. "Yes, it's true," I admitted. Luke's jaw clenched, and he turned away, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice low and filled with hurt. Before I could answer, the doctor interjected. "This is serious, Irene. The child you're carrying is the rightful heir to the Gerard Wolf pack. You need to consider the implications of staying away." I shook my head, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. "No," I said firmly. "I'm not going back to that pack. Miles has Thea now, and they're expecting a child of their own. I won't let my baby be a pawn in their power games." Luke turned back to me, his eyes searching mine for something. Anything that would make this situation easier to bear. "Irene," he said softly, "you don't have to stay with Leon either. He could just be using you." His words cut deep, and I felt a fresh wave of fear wash over me. "I know," I whispered, "but what choice do I have? I can't go back to Miles and Leon. He's the only one who's offered me protection." Luke stepped closer, his expression filled with determination. "Then let me protect you," he said. "You don't have to do this alone, Irene. We'll figure something out, but staying with someone who might be using you isn't the answer." I stared at him, my heart aching with the weight of his words. Part of me wanted to believe him, to trust that there was another way, but the other part of me knew that the world we lived in was far from kind. "Luke, I appreciate everything you've done for me," I said, "but this is my fight. I have to see it through, for my sake and for my baby's sake." He looked at me for a long moment, his expression a mixture of anger, sadness, and something else I couldn't quite place. Finally he sighed, nodding in reluctant acceptance. "Fine," he said, "but I'm holding you to your promise, Irene. If things get worse, you tell me. I won't let you face this alone." I nodded, feeling a small sense of relief that I hadn't lost him as an ally. "Thank you, Luke," I whispered, meaning every word. The doctor handed me the prescription for the pain reliever. "Take care of yourself, Irene," she said softly. "And remember, you always have a place here, no matter what." I gave her a weak smile, knowing that the chances of me ever returning were slim to none. Sitting in the doctor's office, I could see the concern etched on her face. She hesitated for a moment, clearly torn between her duty as a healer and her loyalty to the pack. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I had to say. "Miles has already rejected me," I began to speak despite the turmoil churning inside me. "I've avenged his betrayal in the only way I knew how. Now, I'm a member of the Golden Crest pack, and I might even be its future Luna. I won't return to this pack." The doctor's eyes widened slightly, but she quickly composed herself. She gave me a nod, her expression softening. "Irene, you're stronger than you know," she said. "You've been through so much, and yet you're still standing. I'll keep your secret. You have my word." Relief washed over me, and I felt a small, grateful smile tug at my lips. "Thank you," I whispered. I don't know what I would have done without your support. The doctor waved off my gratitude with a gentle smile. Just take care of yourself, Irene. And remember, you're not alone in this. Luke and I left the office together, the tension between us easing slightly. As we walked toward his car, he turned to me. I'll always stand by you, Irene, he said, his voice firm. No matter what happens. I was touched by his words, and before I could stop myself, I threw my arms around him in a tight hug. Thank you, Luke, I murmured against his chest, feeling a warmth spread through me that I hadn't felt in a long time. He held me for a moment longer before gently releasing me and opening the car door. The drive back to my apartment was quiet, but it was a comfortable silence, one that spoke of unspoken support and understanding. When we arrived, Luke turned to me with a serious expression. If you ever need anything at all, you call me, he said, his voice brooking no argument. I nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for his unwavering loyalty. I will, Luke, thank you. With that, I stepped out of the car and headed toward my apartment building. But before I could even reach the door, I was swept into Leon's arms, his embrace firm and possessive. Irene, he murmured against my hair. I know he's your brother, but I don't want you in another man's arms for too long. I looked up at him, his intense blue eyes locking onto mine, and without thinking, I leaned in and kissed him deeply. The kiss was full of passion and reassurance, a way to remind him that he was the one I had chosen. When I finally pulled away, I could see the lingering doubt in his eyes start to fade. But just as quickly as the warmth returned, it was replaced by a cold, hard edge as his gaze changed to the swelling on my face. His expression darkened and his grip on me tightened. Who did this to you? He demanded in a dangerously low tone. Leon's point of view. After my conversation with Noah, it was almost impossible to focus on work. The lingering doubts he had planted in my mind gnawed at me, making it difficult to concentrate. I had always known that Irene was keeping a certain distance between us, only truly letting me in when we were tangled up in bed. I had convinced myself that it was just a matter of time. If I persisted, she would eventually agree to become mine all the way. But Noah's words had left me unsettled. He had a point, one that I couldn't ignore. Was our bond strong enough? Did Irene really see a future with me? Or was she just using me as a stepping stone in her quest for revenge against Miles? When I received Irene's message, my anxiety only grew. Tonight could be a crucial opportunity for us to finally get closer, to finally break down the walls she had built around her heart. I arrived at her apartment early, eager to see her, to show her how much she meant to me. But as the minutes ticked by and she still hadn't arrived, that familiar knot of unease tightened in my chest. I tried calling her, but she didn't pick up. Since MindLink didn't work on humans, I had no other way to reach her. The thought that something had gone wrong refused to leave my mind. Unable to just sit there, I instructed Carlisle to investigate Irene's whereabouts. When I learned that she had gone to the Miles pack, the unease in my chest exploded into full-blown panic. What was she doing there? Had Miles found a way to lure her back? Every minute that passed felt like an eternity. The fear of losing her, of being betrayed again. Finally, after what felt like hours, I heard the key turn in the lock, and Irene stepped through the door. Relief flooded through me, and I couldn't stop myself from pulling her into my arms, holding her tightly as if she might disappear again. If I let go, her scent, so familiar and intoxicating, calmed me slightly. I kissed her, needing to feel the connection between us, to remind myself that she was still mine. But just as I began to relax, I noticed the swelling on her face. Anger surged through me, hot and blinding. Miles had done this. I knew it without even needing to ask. Who did this to you? I demanded, almost exploding in anger. She placed a hand on my chest, her touch gentle as she tried to soothe me. Leon, please, she whispered, her voice soft and pleading. It's over now. I'm here with you, and that's all that matters. But her words did little to calm the storm raging inside me. The thought of Miles laying his hands on her, hurting her, made my blood boil. He put his hands on you, I growled, the words tearing out of me as I struggled to keep control. Irene's hand pressed more firmly against my chest, her eyes locking onto mine. Leon, listen to me, she said. It's over. I went there because Miles tricked me. He lied and said my mother was ill. When I got there, I found out it was all a ploy to get me to donate blood to Thea. The mention of Thea, Miles' new wife, only fueled my anger. And then what happened? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Irene took a deep breath, her eyes clouding over with pain. He slapped me when I refused. He ordered the doctor to restrain me so I'd have no choice but to comply. But I told him I'm with the Golden Crest Pack now, and if he didn't let me go, I'd report him for illegally detaining a member of another pack. Her bravery in the face of Miles' cruelty both impressed and infuriated me. The thought of that bastard touching her, hurting her, was enough to drive me mad. And then what? I prompted, my voice tight with the effort of keeping my anger in check. He let me go, Irene said softly, her gaze dropping to the floor. He knew he couldn't afford any more negative publicity, not after everything that's happened. I clenched my fists, the muscles in my arms tensing, as I fought to rein in the fury that threatened to consume me. He's going to pay for this, I muttered, more to myself than to her. I'll make sure of it. Irene shook her head, stepping closer to me, her hands reaching up to cup my face. Leon, please, she whispered. I don't want more violence. I just want to move forward, to leave all of this behind us. I could see the pain in her eyes. I wanted to promise her that I'd let it go, that I'd let Miles' actions slide for her sake. But as much as I wanted to give her peace, I couldn't shake the burning need for revenge. I leaned in, pressing my forehead against hers, letting the silence hang between us as I tried to find the right words. Irene, I murmured, I can't let him get away with this. Not after what he did to you. She closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek as she let out a shaky breath. I just want to be with you, Leon, she whispered. No more fighting, no more schemes, just us. I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her close, feeling the warmth of her body against mine. I'll protect you, I vowed. No matter what, you're mine, Irene, and I'll never let anyone hurt you again. But when Irene hesitated before speaking, I could feel the tension between us thickening, like a storm about to break. Her eyes met mine, and I saw something there that made my heart pound harder. Fear, uncertainty, something I wasn't used to seeing from her. Leon, she began, there's something you need to know, something I've been hiding. I held my breath, bracing myself for whatever bombshell she was about to drop. But nothing could have prepared me for the words that followed. I'm pregnant, she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm 20 weeks along, and the child is Miles. The room seemed to tilt on its axis, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. My thoughts raced, my emotions a chaotic mess. She was carrying Miles' child, the man I despised more than anyone else in this world. The man who had hurt her, rejected her, yet still left a piece of him inside her. My wolf roared within me, demanding action, demanding I do something, anything. But I held it back. I had to think. I had to stay calm. Irene's eyes were on me, searching my face for any sign of rejection. I knew she was terrified I would push her away, abandon her and the pup. And truthfully, a part of me was conflicted. In the beginning, I suspected it, but I pushed the thought away. I didn't want to think of it. As an alpha, the thought of raising another man's child, another alpha's child, went against every instinct I had. Could I really accept this? Could I raise Miles' pup as my own? But then I looked at Irene, really looked at her, and the answer became clear. I loved her. I had already fallen so deeply in love with her that the thought of losing her was unbearable. If rejecting this child meant losing her, then I couldn't know. I wouldn't do it. I couldn't let her go. She was mine, and I wasn't about to let anything, not even this, come between us. She continued, her voice trembling slightly. This is my biggest secret, Leon. Miles doesn't even know. I need you to seriously consider whether you can accept this child, because it will determine our future together. Her words cut through me like a knife. But I knew she was right. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about the life growing inside her, a life she clearly already loved and was determined to protect. I had to make a choice, and I knew there was only one answer. Irene, I said, reaching out to take her hand in mine. I won't harm the pup. It's a part of you, and because of that, I can accept it. A smile broke through the worry lines on her face, but I wasn't done. But no one can ever know who the real father is, I added, my voice firm. Miles can never find out. I want the child to be seen as ours, not his. She nodded, her smile widening, as the tension in her body seemed to melt away. Of course, she agreed. Thank you, Leon. You don't know how much this means to me. Seeing her so relieved, so happy, filled me with a sense of triumph. I had won. Miles was no longer an obstacle in our relationship. Irene had lowered her guard with me, trusted me with her deepest secret, and it thrilled me more than I could express. I leaned in closer, brushing my lips against hers. Now, thank me with a kiss, I murmured, a playful grin tugging at the corner of my mouth. Irene's response was immediate, her arms wrapping around my neck as she kissed me back, the passion between us reigniting like a spark to dry tinder. I felt her body respond to mine, but before things could go any further, a thought crossed my mind. Will this affect the baby? I asked, my voice husky with desire. Irene blushed, the color rising in her cheeks, as she let out a soft moan. I spoke to my doctor, she admitted, her voice breathy. As long as things aren't too intense, it should be fine. That was all the reassurance I needed. Without another word, I scooped her up into my arms, carrying her to the bedroom. As I laid her down gently on the bed, I leaned over her, my gaze locking onto hers. I promised to be careful, I whispered, pressing a tender kiss to her lips.